The final thing I wanted to dwell on is this notion that we see during exercise of cardiovascular drift. Now, this is a phenomenon that we often see. In fact, you'll see it in pretty much all exercise tests, and you'll see it even in individuals who are going out and just doing exercise and recording heart rate themselves. And this is where, for example, if you do a constant load exercise, so 50, 70, 75% VO2 max, so fixed wattage, one of the things we start to see is that irrespective of the fact the workload hasn't changed, that over time we start to see particularly heart rate starts to drift, starts to rise. Now, this is quite interesting. Nothing else has changed. We haven't changed exercise intensity. For cycling, we're not changing cadence or changing running speed. Yet heart rate starts to drift away. So why is that the case? Well, one of the primary mechanisms that purport to this is actually due to the fact that we're trying to dissipate heat. So if we look at panel A on the left-hand side, you can see the uniform response. And what you can see is over this time period at a constant workload, notice that heart rate drifts, heart rate rises. So this is the degree of change in many ways. But so does the amount of oxygen being extracted at the muscle. So that's telling us there's an increased oxygen demand to do work. And so there's an increase in oxygen uptake. But cardiac output doesn't really change. So the drive that's going on here is a rise in the heart rate. Interestingly, stroke volume starts to decrease. Now, one of the things that the variables that's put forward, which really comes from this panel on the right, is it's not dehydration per se, although this is what Eddie Cord is trying to show here, is it may just be linked to the need to dissipate heat. That you're doing the exercise. Now we're doing the constant load exercise, so the proportion of cardiac output that is required at the exercising muscles is predetermined. That's what it's the function of. But now you start to produce heat. Remember, 75% of the energy that comes from the splitting of the ATP molecule is lost in the form of heat. That heat's got to be dissipated. I've already referred to the notion that the blood is a primary vessel for dissipating heat. But you're already apportioning a large proportion of that cardiac output to do that work. So the only way you're going to achieve that is having a disproportionate rise in the heart rate to do that. At the same time, if you're getting hotter, that is going to be associated with the fact there's an increased demand at the muscle. The heat drives up metabolic rate. That's why oxygen consumption, AVO2 diff go up. The reason the stroke volume starts to go down is because of this notion of trying to dissipate heat. If we're trying to move the heat from the central parts of the body to the periphery, remember what we referred to. We talked about this peripheral redistribution of blood flow. We get a reduction in venous return. If there's a reduction in venous return, you would see that in this reduction in stroke volume. And you can see that the rise in heart rate is proportional to the reduction in stroke volume. So all that's happening is we're redistributing blood flow because we're getting hotter at the same exercise intensity because we're just producing excessive heat for doing the same amount of work. Stroke volume goes down because there's less blood being returned per beat to the heart, but to keep exercising that intensity, we have to drive up the heart rate. And that's why we get what is referred to as a cardiovascular drift.